Welcome to the Conduit Deeper podcast, a podcast that takes a deep dive into the details that surround our current sermon series, from current events to fascinating finds to conversations that take us deeper into the Word. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome to the Deeper Podcast. My name is Mo, Executive Pastor at Conduit Church, joined with our lead pastor, Darren Tyler. And there's a bit of good news, bad news out of the gate, okay? Today is Wednesday, September the 24th. Now, per the social media crew, there was supposed to be a rapture yesterday. So the good news is, well, I don't know if it's good news or bad news. We're still here.
Yeah, that is kind of bad news.
Because we want to not be here. We want to be in heaven with
give it to
the Lord.
Give it to the algorithms, I guess. I totally missed this one.
Are you serious?
Until like yesterday, I started seeing people posting, "Oh, I guess I'm still here." Or one of them was like, "Oh, if we got raptured, this blows, man. Like this is heaven. This is not what I was looking for."
It was supposed to be yesterday, but then I was confused. Like, okay, what part of the day? Like, what time zone are we operating off of?
Yeah, because you want to get like a good last meal in, you know?
Right. It's like, because there was all these times floating around. Like, this is when it's going to be. It's going to be.
Oh, they're actually going time?
Well, they were saying like, yeah, like by this point of the day, but it's like which time zone?
Right.
Or are we talking about America? Or like, is this happening in Australia?
It's usually America, though, isn't it?
Like,
right?
who's going to be first?
It's some weirdo in America, so it's got to be Central Time, you know, from some weird.
Does it all happen at the same time,
Who
instantaneously?
Who started this one?
Man, I started to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole on this, but man, it was so distracting. I'm like, why am I bothering with this?
Yeah, right. Those are like 30 minutes you're not getting back. It felt honestly a little bit to me like one of when all of a sudden you see, oh, it's National Daughters Day, and everybody's posting pictures of their daughters. There is no National Daughters Day, but
Yeah,
it just
somebody said it.
So it felt like that's what this one felt like. But
I think it was preempted by the fact that yesterday in Israel it was some sort of, I'm going to get this wrong.
Feast of Trumpets.
Feast of Trumpets.
The Jewish New Year was yesterday.
And so the trumpets will sound, and because it was the Jewish New Year, they were somehow trying to correlate trumpets to the fact that Trump's in office. I mean, it's ridiculous that yesterday.
Wait, no, they did not go with Trump's in office and trumpets and because of course in the original Hebrew,
Trump will sound.
Oh man, well he was sounding this week, but like.
He spoke yesterday.
He wasn't sounding like Jesus, but what? That's so. So usually there's in the history of Jesus coming back predictions. There's usually like one dude somewhere with a book, and he's got a day, and he's done some math, you know, that makes sense only to him.
Yeah.
But this one literally felt like it came out of nowhere. So I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh well. Well, maybe tomorrow.
We're here. We're here. We're back. We're back at it. And glad to be here. Glad you're here. Glad you're joining us. Thanks for listening. One thing we wanted to kind of talk about, it's kind of a follow-up. You know, we're in the middle of everyone, I think, collectively catching their breath from the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And I feel like it would be irresponsible to just keep moving as if that happened last week, and then we're moving on to whatever else is happening.
Yeah.
But I just feel like collectively as a nation, and as the world is still kind of catching their breath of what happened. It was so traumatic, and I don't know. I just feel like we should still be talking about it. That there's still a lot to unpack.
Yeah, there's a ton to unpack because there was a New York Times piece on this. Of course, there's like 50 New York Times pieces, and you know, they definitely went to a different event than we did, right? But they quoted a guy who had actually never heard of Charlie Kirk before from Wisconsin, and so he started watching videos last week, and the quote was like this like mic drop quote in the middle of a New York Times article. But the guy said, I felt compelled to go, even though I never heard of him, because I felt like they were attacking. They shot me. Like, he believed what I believe. And that one sentence was like, that sums up, I think, what the majority of the people that are grieving feel is that when you look at what he is saying in his videos and on college campuses, he's not saying anything that we don't believe. And so he was being shot for something that I believe. and it felt like he shot me. What this guy was saying. So that is the collective grief of that is the reality of, and I mean, I've been saying for years, like just joking, like, Katie Kirk hates us, right? You understand that, like the media does not wake up with any fond thoughts of us at all. But even me going, yeah, but this guy shot him for something that we would say on any given day, which none of it's abnormal. These are normal biblical faith issues, and they shot him for it. And I say they at this point, it's a he who was dating a they them, or I don't know. I still haven't figured out what that was, but that tone and when you go back to the attempts on Trump's life, there's I heard a guy say that, actually John Meacham, a historian, saying that one of the things that when you look at history, that when America gets to a place like this in the past, it's because we don't have an agreed upon meaning of what it means to be an American. And so there's this violent, when we can't agree on what it means to be an American. And so you go to the 60s. And so where this one feels so specific to me and unique is that this wasn't just about being an American, it was about being a Christian in America and the values of it, right? And so not only can we not stop talking about it because of that, but we also can't stop talking about it because the amount of people who are coming to Christ. I got a message yesterday from one of our church families, a guy named Nick, who was asking a recommendation on a Bible because his coworker, who is not a Christian, asked him, hey, what kind of Bible should I get? I think I should get a Bible. Like something is happening in our country, specifically in America, specifically in young people, men and women, not just young men, but young men and women, that the compass was destroyed and they're looking for like a true north now. And they're going in large, giant numbers to the Bible, to church. And it's one of the reasons we've hit it head on. It's none of my business how other churches are handling it, but it is ours. And all I know is that if you're not answering the questions that everybody's already asking as a pastor, that feels a little bit like malpractice to me. Understand that some aren't educated on it. Some didn't know who he was. That's okay. We can't know who everybody is. I mean, my wife didn't know who he was, but that's also our job then to get educated on it real quick and to say, if on any given Sunday, if 80 or 90% of the people in your church are really wondering about the same thing, it's okay to maybe take a break from the series on that Sunday and address the questions that they're asking.
I've been really surprised at the number of pastors across the country, or pastors that I know, or churches that I'm aware of across the country that I keep in touch with, or what have you. The amount of guys that didn't know who he was. Like, I came across a couple that literally had never heard of him, and then those that were aware of who he was, but dismissed him because of his associations.
Yeah,
like he's that right wing, far right, racist guy. Yeah. So we're not going to really talk about it. I was surprised at the amount of preconceived ideas around him. And then as people are trying to catch up now, they're doing their homework. They're like, oh, well, actually, he does actually represent me.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I was listening to like Bob the Tomato talk about what Charlie was known for. And it was like infuriating because I'm like, well, the reason he's quote unquote known for this is because of you, because of New York Times, because of David French. You guys are the ones that cast a narrative of him. So if that's what he's quote unquote known for, that didn't come out of nowhere. Nobody made that up out of hat with it. And what's been, I think, really healthy is, and I've seen so many videos of this that people are sending to me and keep sending them. They're great. Somebody going, I thought he was this because this is what I heard he was. And then I'm watching the videos and going, that's not at all who he is. Like it was could not be a more clear example of a leftist narrative painted of an individual. And let's be honest, it's of everything they're really saying, there's the question behind the question. The underlying tone is he supported Trump. That's the real hatred.
It's true.
You know, everything else sort of built around that. But, you know, any video you see, like the ones where he's talking, they say he's a racist. And he's, you know, when you see him in a video talking to an actual racist, you know, it's just, it's not only unfair, it's just blatantly false with it. But it was like, I heard somebody, it might've been Rob McCoy, say that the ultimate missionary in America, he was using politics to get faith, not using faith to get to politics. It was the complete opposite. That was the gateway in as a bridge and a platform to speak about Christianity. And I'm really trying my hardest to, you know, share the same forgiveness of Erica Kirk that she displayed. But when I hear people talking in that, you know, using even the term Christian nationalist as a pejorative, you know, as if the idea that we have a representative government, that we as Christians should not have representation in that government. Like, if that's what they mean by Christian nationalist, then that is what I am. But that word it's used as a slur. It's the same leftist trick, which is we can't really argue on the facts, and so we're going to call you a name to pigeonhole you into this identity that is, you know, over in this corner. Anyway, I just know that even in our church in Franklin, Tennessee, the most over-churched and under-gospeled city in the world, we're seeing record numbers of people make decisions to follow Christ. You know, on Sunday, I saw 3 young men come up with their parents and stand with, by the way, Jim Weidman, one of the premier next-to-gen, you know, guys in history. They couldn't have walked to a better guy for prayer. Literally as a family making decision to follow Jesus. And it wasn't that they wanted to be like Charlie, it's that, but if if Charlie followed Christ and that's what made him who he was, then I don't need Charlie, I need Christ. And that's happening in record numbers around the country right now.
I don't know if everyone got a chance to watch the memorial service last Sunday. It's been, you know, a few days, so maybe folks have caught up.
When it was like an African church service. Like
it was long.
8 hours long, man.
Yeah, it was great. It started in the middle of one of our services, and so we in the booth we had it going at the same time as our worship service, which was.
By the way, I could tell too.
Yeah, we were like,
which I didn't. I was not offended.
We were
I was just jealous.
You know, they had a lot of worship music, worship bands. You know, the whole arena singing songs that we would all sing, and you know, and this is in front of, you know, Elon and the boys and, you know, the whole crew, like, you know, dignitaries. I mean, just so many people that in one place under the sound of the gospel, under these worship songs, which I thought was powerful in and of itself. And, you know, to have some people on stage that we either have connections to or are friends with. And it was just cool to see them, you know, really involved in that. And let's just talk about it from a logistics standpoint. The fact that they pulled off an event like this, that went off flawlessly within 7 days to house, you know, that arena holds, you know, probably that stadium holds probably 75,000 or so, maybe a little more on the floor. And then to have, I think 300,000 is the number of traced phones, IDs in the
297,000.
Okay, 297. Yeah. So they had overflows in the parking lot, in the arena next door. I mean, and just the stage. I mean, I'm going to get like micro logistic from the stage design to the actual staging and rigging, these LED panels, the flow of events, multiple bands, multiple musicians, all on the same stage together. Somewhere over the past 7 days was a rehearsal, maybe. And it was flawless.
Flawless. You and I have both seen what it takes to put together. The closest maybe in Christendom would have been a creation festival. Like they would have 70,000 people. And it takes an army to put together one festival with a stage, which is when you look at the staging compared to what they had in that arena, is a fraction of. And I mean, you didn't see anybody yanking their in-ears out because they couldn't hear themselves in the mix. I mean, it was like I felt like I was watching God part the Red Sea.
Amazing.
Because the logistics, you've got security logistics, you've got the audio logistics, the video logistics, the broadcast logistics, and these are all. It was flawless.
Yes. Yeah, security logistics needs to be noted. It was Special Event Assessment Rating Level 1. So it's called a SEER, SEAR, SEER Level 1 rating, equivalent to that of a Super Bowl. Now, to pull off a security for a Super Bowl event, they are putting in contingencies and plans over the course of 12 months. Like, they don't just wake up and like, all right, we're gonna figure out what we're gonna do today for the Super Bowl. No, I mean, this is months and months and months of planning. So for them to, again, pull off all the logistics, including security and parking and attendance and just the logistics of the band and the speakers and the teleprompters and the slides that go up on the big screen, like all the things that even we think about for a Sunday, in less than 7 days was just amazing. Kudos to their team for doing that with excellence. And I just think it represents.
I was going to say, I look forward to somebody writing the memoir on that because, 7 days in September, I don't know what they're going to call it, but that was remarkable.
It's really cool.
And I have never wanted to be in two places more than once in my entire life. Rob had invited me to join him there.
That's cool.
And, but I just knew that this is my job. This is my church. I need to be with my people. And now I'll say I had some pastor friends out there sending me selfies, and there was some FOMO happening.
I bet.
But at the end of every service, when I was watching, and it's not that I'm the only guy that can carry the load. We all know that. But there's a moment where the shepherd needs to be there, and that was just one of those moments. And so, no regrets at all. Just a little bit of FOMO. But at the end of every service, watching people put their trust in Jesus, and again in Franklin, Tennessee, this was exactly where I needed to be. And
I was kind of going through just kind of the list of those that did speak, and there's some names on here that I wasn't familiar with prior to it, which I thought maybe I knew everybody kind of in those circles. One of the guys is Sergio Gore. Are you familiar with him?
No.
He spoke. Really interesting guy. He's also under a ton of heat, actually, within the Trump administration. So I'm actually surprised that he was invited. That's a whole other conversation, but just a name to kind of put on the radar. Sergio Gore. And then Jack Posebic, Andrew Colvett. Andrew is the producer of the Charlie Kirk Show. And this one kind of hit me a little bit. Him and Charlie do their podcast every day. We try to pull this off once a week.
Yeah, and it's a stretch, quite a week, right?
They do it every day, and Andrew and Charlie, they're close friends, and again, recording a podcast every single day, so they have to be synced up. And so for Andrew to do Charlie's podcast, what was it, like just 2 or 3 days later with the empty chair, which they continue to do with the empty chair. I mean, that's just heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, I've kind of put myself in that spot to think, oh man, I can't imagine if something was to happen to you and having to come on here and have an empty chair. Like that got me messed up. To think of the dedication and the conviction to carry through with something like that.
And parenthetically, like that would be what you or I would either one want, right?
That's right. And that's the final part of that, right? That's what Charlie would have wanted. And that's what either one of us would want, is to continue to be a voice.
Yeah. Yeah, because just because the voice got silenced doesn't mean the message is silent. And it's why Rob was doing what Rob was doing all last week with McCoy. Like the greatest way to honor Charlie, right, was to continue. Like if he wasn't speaking at the memorial, he actually would have been here. Because he did make it. I don't know how he did it, but he made it here to speak at the event at World Outreach Church with Pastor Alan Jackson. Wow. So he must have been on a red eye to get back. And, I heard from multiple people who were standing in the arena when Rob was speaking, and they said that it was a really large number of people that stood up when he gave that first gospel presentation. And by the way, the first of what would turn out to be, felt like dozens of gospel presentations.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to mention that, speaking of McCoy, is like Mikey McCoy, his son spoke, which I hadn't put a face with a name. I've heard the name Mikey. Rob talks about Mikey all the time. I was trying to figure out exactly who he was in the crew, but he gave an impassioned plea himself. I mean, he was fiery. He did a great job.
Yeah, I actually texted Rob like, hey, no hate here, but your son just totally one-upped you, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, he did a great job. And I did think it was interesting. I want to go through each one of these, but I did think it was very interesting to see and hear guys like Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of Defense, guys like Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, even Vice President J.D. Vance, be very clear about the gospel.
Yeah.
That was encouraging in of itself.
Yeah, because historically, I don't know if there was ever, I can't even think of an event that had that many eyes watching simultaneously in a live setting to hear that worldwide. Like, that's historic. Yeah. Historic in the terms of a global harvest of souls that's happening right now. So I do wonder, if you're David French or some of these guys that are clutching their pearls about this, like, can you at least set aside your political thing for just 5 seconds and acknowledge that potentially hundreds of thousands of people have come to Christ in the last week? Like, can you maybe, put a pause on the blog and think about that before you write anymore? But, be that as it may, that's what's happened, and it's what's happening. And, we have an opportunity to now disciple a generation, which it's timely, because like any revival, when it starts, there's those that come in immediately, the church camp high, and our job as churches is to disciple, to build up those and equip those who've come to faith now for this next generation.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to get to is Erica Kirk, her response, her speech, and as well as President Trump's. Erica at one point, delivered an emotional address and forgiving the shooter, which was super powerful. And it was at that moment, my wife lost it.
Yeah, I think the entire country collectively lost it.
That was just super powerful. A lot to work through there. A lot to work through on that in terms of all the implications for that, what it means. And then, to have President Trump come up right after that and say what he said. So, she forgave the shooter, and all the emotion from that and what it means. Gosh, it's just to find a place in her heart to offer forgiveness for somebody that absolutely has destroyed her life in some ways, in the biggest ways, right?
Every way, yeah.
Every way. And then, the Trump to come up to say, I couldn't, basically him saying I couldn't do that. Like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I hate my enemies.
Yeah, I was going to say, he went further. I don't want the best for my enemies. I want them destroyed. I want the worst for my enemies, or use some language like that.
Yeah. Charlie would be mad at me for saying this. Erica, I'm sure you're going to talk to me about this later, but I can't stand my enemies.
Yeah.
It was a really interesting juxtaposition there in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, for us as believers, is the difference, right? Like, between politics saving the world and Jesus saving the world. And, if Trump is a Christian, that's definitely not the way of Christ. It's definitely not what Jesus has commanded us to do. It's not what the gospel empowers us to do. Some of the language that we've used in the past was, when I stopped viewing my enemies as actual enemies and instead viewing them as hostages of the enemy, the actual enemy. That doesn't mean that there doesn't need to be, the government, Romans 13, super clear, for justice, but the body of Christ, our job is to forgive our enemies. And literally Jesus, I love the way that she's on the cross, the guys that have pounded the nails into him and whipped him, forgive them, Father, for they don't know what they do. And that's the kind of language that the gospel empowers us to do. And there's all kinds of benefits and blessings. Any of God's commands to us are not to be a burden, but for our blessing. And by forgiving him, she is basically saying, I'm giving God the power for justice, because I can't carry the weight of it. And it doesn't mean that what he did was right. It doesn't mean that what he did, that she would ever, want to be in the same room with him again, right? But forgiving him is the power of the gospel. And it was like, there could not have been a better juxtaposition of the two choices in front of us as believers, right? And I think that's something that Kirk did really well that I've envied, because when he's in these debates, he was very direct, but was also very loving with them. Like there's times I'm like, man, you could literally destroy this guy right now verbally, and did not do that. And so, I find myself personally challenged for that, because there's, even now I'm kind of throwing disparaging comments at guys like David French and Phil Vischer, and they are brothers in Christ. I'm just, the shallow part of my heart is kind of exhausted by it. But it's like what she did that night was everybody preached the gospel, but she lived the gospel in front of hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah, I think it goes back to a little bit to what you said on Sunday. What we taught on Sunday is this idea of inviting Jesus into the boat, in the storm that we're in, and that's a picture of two examples: somebody inviting Jesus into the boat, or somebody trying to just be in the boat by themselves and just try to strong arm it and push through it, and capsized or not, it's like I'm going down with the ship, don't care. But inviting Jesus into the situation, there is a lot of freedom there.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off.
Yeah. Yeah. As pastors, but as just humans in general. And, that is the clearest example that I can't think of a more profound example. Someone murdered her husband and she has a choice to make. And she made the right one. And forgiveness is not something that's a one and done. Like I've in my experiences, you got to wake up every morning and choose forgiveness in that, it doesn't change the anger, it doesn't change the hurt or the sadness, but it does set you free. And it's, there have been people that, hey, we need to pray for this kid. I'll be honest, I haven't yet. There's a lot of people praying, so it's not like my lack of prayer is going to do it, but it's more of a lack of my own willingness to I don't know, man. I need a minute for that. But at the same time, even for us, for our moment, we have a choice, right? To forgive him for taking out the voice of a generation. And I do like the way that Rob worded it, right? Which is when a tyrant dies, his power dies with him. When a martyr dies, his power increases, right? So it's decreases versus increases. And that was on display. And yet I'd still rather have Charlie Kirk back. I still would. And I know we're going to be in eternity and we're going to look back and go, this was all, like Charlie's not, just like the Apostle Paul, all of the disciples that 2,000 years into eternity, they're not going, oh man, we got hosed. I can't believe that. It was righteous and true are your judgments, O God. And that's where faith comes in, that even though his voice was taken out, that someday we'll understand fully the impact of what happened because his voice was taken out, but the message was not.
Last week, there was an incident in terms of voices being taken out in a very different way. Kind of want to talk through this. I'm curious. Jimmy Kimmel, a week ago, commented on the assassination and, man, just had some ridiculous comments about Charlie, to the point where the FCC chairman threatened to take action against ABC for what Jimmy said on his show. I was interested as to what grounds he would have for doing that, to pull somebody off the air like that. And what I found is that the remarks violated broadcast regulations by promoting bias and potentially inciting unrest, citing concerns over the network's broadcast license. So that's the whatever clause they found that says that it could be that it promoted bias and potentially inciting unrest. So they suspended him. They suspended Jimmy from his show, of which lasted for, I think, 3 days, three work days, Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday. And so anyways, Jimmy was back on last night. It was his first night, and his he had a couple things to say, but one of the things that he really kind of leaned into was the fact that it was satire. He said
that was the card he played.
That's the card he's playing.
All right.
That it was satire versus free speech. Like, that's the argument. Like, okay, this is satire. Basically, I can say what I want to say, but it's satire. It's a comedic show. This is a really slippery slope, no matter what side of the aisle your team is.
Yeah, there's two. So I'm viewing this, sort of slicing it into different categories. There's the category of, ABC and an employee, and do they have the right to fire an employee for saying something that is costing them money? And the answer is 100% yes. Where I get really uncomfortable is when the government, right or left, is making threats like that. I didn't like it when the Biden administration was doing it. I don't like it when the Trump administration is doing it. When I said we were voting for policies, not people, not a person, one of the policies was freedom of speech. Yeah. And we've seen it. I've been alive long enough that, this never de-escalates. It always escalates. So whatever power that like Biden used, Trump increases it, and then the next guy will do a little bit more. That's never, you have to stop it at some point. And now that said, watching the collective pearl clutching of Hollywood about freedom of speech and the danger of tyranny,
right,
with no sense of irony or the hypocrisy that what the FCC chair was a threat publicly. What happened actually in the last 5 years was the Biden administration, they might not have admitted to it publicly, but thank God for the Twitter files, thank God for the these things that have been exposed. They were actively suppressing. So what Hollywood has shown us is what they really want is free speech for me, not for thee. So, but that's literally, I can't remember the statement, but you have the right to say whatever you want, and I'll die for that. For your right to say something hateful about me, because if we're thought policing people, we see where that goes.
Yeah.
And when you start using hate speech as a category, or even him saying satire as a, the government does not need to be, I'm not talking, this is not even a biblical thing. I'm just talking straight Constitution. The government has no business, should not have any business silencing right or left voices. The best antidote for bad speech is better speech. Right? Bad ideas, better ideas. But having the government threaten like that, and again, 5 years, everybody from Gina Carano, right? I mean, there were literally the sitting president of the United States was taken off of a social media platform, and Jimmy Kimmel, they all mocked it, they laughed at it, but when it came for them, suddenly,
it's true.
So I'm not a fan of, I try to do that, like what they say, call balls and strikes. Like I try to do that. I don't like this at all. Mm-hmm. Because he didn't have to do that. I think that the market was going to speak for itself. When you got these networks pulling the show off, I mean, ABC has to at some point make a decision. And I still don't know, because I guess Sinclair did not broadcast last night?
Yeah, so some are still not broadcasting. So major ABC affiliate owners, Sinclair Broadcast Group and Nexstar Media Group, still are holding back broadcasting, which accounts for 23% of the overall viewership. But there's some major markets. 70 major markets, from DC, Nashville's one of them. It's not broadcast because those two still hold the rights. Yeah. Salt Lake, New Orleans, etc. So yeah, I mean, there's a quarter of their entire distribution that is saying, nope, we're not going to stand for that. Interesting. He acknowledged what we just talked about Erica Kirk forgiving the man who shot her husband. He said this. I'll give him credit because he said it, but I don't believe him. So I don't know if that's fair or not. We'll see. That might be me being very cynical, and I apologize. But he said this: Erica Kirk forgave the man who shot her husband. That is an example we should follow. If you believe in the teachings of Jesus, as I do, there it was, a selfless act of grace, forgiveness from a grieving widow. It touched me deeply. He's saying that as his eyes are welling up. Now, again, I could be very cynical, being 20 plus years in the entertainment industry. The cynical part of me feels like he was told to say that was written for him. Muster it up, make it happen, because we got bills to pay. The other hand is maybe something shifted. Maybe he saw something that inspired him, and he was truly moved by that moment, and is reconsidering and thinking about some things. That's what I want to believe. That's my hope. But man, I've just don't. I have a hard time. I have a hard time believing him. As cruel and as crude as he has been over the years.
Peter has a lot of wisdom for us, living godly in a pagan society. And 1 Peter 2, he goes down this whole line of thinking of governments that hate you, and here's how you should still respect, you don't violate God's word. But he goes on to talk about how, if you're just being commended for doing, someone who's treating you good and you love them, that anybody can do that. But it's when you are loving someone who is actively harming you. And then he drops this bomb in verse 15 it's 1 Peter 2:15. And so let your good works silence the talk of foolish men. And what Erica Kirk did in that 5-minute window was literally shut the mouths of every foolish voice in America. Because how do you argue with that? Which is why I was so bummed when Trump gets up there and just peas in the Cheerios, man. Like, come on, can you give? They could have ended at that moment and walk away from it. But even with that, if you're Jimmy Fallon or any one of the Jimmys that know, by the way, the biggest news for me this week was people still watch late night television. Like I genuinely was, I don't even know how to turn on a TV in my house. I know.
I just can't imagine their live viewership is actually worth anything. I think, I'm guessing the majority of that lives on YouTube post show, you know, through the clips and just through segments, on YouTube and other outlets that they have, proprietary outlets. But yeah, I mean, the live viewership, like nobody's staying up and watching those guys anymore. Like, not really.
I can't even as a guy that literally would rearrange my day to make sure I saw David Letterman in the early 90s, what wacky, was going to happen. Right. All I know now is that you don't have to do that because you can just wait till the internet tells you what was hilarious last night, and I don't have to stay up late anymore. But I was genuinely surprised that people watched television. Like, I haven't had actual cable at my house in 15 years. Yeah. But anyway, what she did by doing that, and so whether his tears were genuine, who knows? What we do know is, what do you say to that anyway? What could he say? Yeah. That's not this, again, false equivocation. There is one party, right, at least in the politics side, that not only platforms but actively for abortion, for trans, mutilating children and evil, and even watching some of the videos from these college campuses of the young people showing up to mock Charlie Kirk memorials. They're literally yelling and sneering at them, and I'm like, oh, this is what happened with Jesus. Like, they weren't, like, when the religious people of their time, and make no mistake, leftism is a religion. It just doesn't have a God, but there is a religion. It's got all the earmarks of religion. Even like gnashing of teeth, like that's what the Bible, I think Paul, they were gnashing their teeth at Stephen. Gnashing. By the way, when the Bible speaks of a place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, don't misunderstand. Like, the weeping and the gnashing of teeth is not because they're in pain. The gnashing of teeth is they're still raging against God from hell. Like, that's what it means. But watching like Houston and Texas, these universities, and they're just gnashing their teeth and insults and hurling. I'm like, this is as Bible times as you can get, and it is in our culture. We're not used to this. We better get used to it.
Well, the other thing that I don't want us to get used to is the fact that people are giving their lives to Christ. To go back to Sunday, I had the opportunity to stand back at the Connect desk after one of the services, and several people, we had a line full of people coming to the Connect desk to let us know that they made a decision, and then ask for a Bible. They don't own one. They've never had one. They've never read it. Tracy, one of our amazing ladies on staff, told a quick story yesterday during our staff meeting, kind of catching up from Sunday, about this man who, young man, he's probably in his late 20s or so. He's grew up Jewish and knew about Christ but didn't know Christ, and how Sunday tipped the scale for him. Well, how this event tipped the scale, and how Sunday he decided to jump all in and invite Jesus into his boat, as you taught. And he's so hungry for the truth. Wanted the Bible, wanted to know, okay, where do I start? I don't even know where to start on this Bible. Right. Like, we handed him a book, and he's like, okay. Like,
feels a little overwhelming. You want to start on page 1? Yeah.
So what's amazing about Tracy, she's our guest services coordinator and women's ministry director, and she already had the book of John earmarked for our new believers. Start with a little sticky note that said, "Start here."
I didn't know she did that. That's awesome.
Isn't it brilliant?
Yeah.
And he said, okay, that's what I'm going to do this week. I'm going to start reading the book of John.
Yeah, I really felt, it was funny you say that, because it hit me while I was speaking on Sunday. I think it was first service. Telling someone, hey, read the Bible every day, and they pick up this book that looks like, Ayn Rand's, the Fountainhead, like 700 pages. So even just being able to say something real quick that, by the way, this is like 66 books. This is a library of books. Right. And start here with it is the most basic fundamental thing, but we've got to remember that there's some people that really need the most basic fundamental things now, because the world I grew up in, almost everybody I knew was at some point crammed into a Lutheran catechism or, a Catholic. We at least had a working knowledge of the Bible. But there's a generation right now, that's not the case.
Yeah.
Everybody that I knew, I couldn't, if you were to walk through the town I grew up in, every door, every house, there would have been a Bible in every home. Now, it would have had dust on a lot of them, but there was at least a Bible there. That's not the case in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's why. And again, Tracy, great. It was such a Holy Spirit timed moment. It was 2 weeks ago, right? That she and Jerry had come back from California and mentioned the New Believer Bibles, and could we order some? Like, yes, like the fastest yes I've ever given. Order them right now. That was before the Charlie Kirk assassination. So literally the moment we first had them on that Sunday was the first Sunday after the assassination, and perfect timing. And she ordered, I think, 100 more. We're just giving them out right and left.
It's great. It's encouraging. We don't know what's next here. I mean, this Sunday, we're still, again, trying to just navigate this and encourage the church, as we kind of talked about last week, and try to coach them up and get them prepared and ready. I think this Sunday you kind of maybe do a bit of a kind of a part 3 of this thought coming off of what happened. Do you want to share just a little bit about where we're heading?
Yeah, the crowd catches back up to Jesus again. Like, they go down to the after it's daylight, and they realize Jesus isn't there. And John makes a very special point to make sure that they knew that they don't know how he got away, because there was no boats. So they saw the disciples leave, but there's no Jesus. So how did he? So he's making a point that they knew he had to do something pretty wild. But then boats show up. And now they go to the other side, and the crowd is following him again. And Jesus makes a point to say, you didn't come here for the signs. You came here because I made bread out of nothing. And what he's implying, it seems to me, is this is still part of the crowd trying to make him king by force. And think about how powerful you are as a king if you can make food, right? In an agrarian society where they worked there was no grocery stores, and you could just make food. That's our king. We definitely want him to be king. He's a food guy. He can feed us. So it was this idea that, and we have to separate that we want a voice in government, but the government is not our voice.
That's good.
Jesus was not going to be king by force. And so our influence is into the government, but the government is not our source of that. And Jesus then goes on that's where he talks about, I'm the bread of life. He connects it to the manna from the wilderness. And the whole thing was a living example story that was a gospel presentation that he was making to them with it. And so we have to walk this fine line as Christians that, yes, we have a representative government. I want representatives in my government that have biblical Christian values, right? But that is not the goal, and it is not the salvation, and it is not our hope.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to Sunday, and we're preparing for Sunday. We're getting ready for Sunday. The past couple of Sundays have been some of our largest attended Sundays in Conduit history, and so one of the ways that worked is, man, we've been spread out across 4 services and haven't had to turn away a car in several weeks now because
remarkable.
Yeah, because we've been spread out. Our 8 a.m. attendance has jumped. Our 5 p.m. attendance has jumped. So thank you to those that listen, those that attend. Thank you for spreading out. And we would just ask this coming week that you would continue to attend the service that you've been attending the past few weeks that has allowed us to spread out and not turn away any cars and make room for those that are coming back to church, those that are coming to Christ. We'll be here again soon. Next week, I think we have a special guest. We're going to dive into that a little bit. But until then, would you subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already? Thank you for following us. Thank you for listening to us at Spotify and Apple Music. If you want to leave a review to help the algorithms discover this podcast, we do appreciate it. We'll talk again soon. Thanks.